Welcome to the Cinnaire MSHDA 2020 Virtual Asset Management Conference. Thank you for your interest in our virtual sessions. We hope you enjoy rent collection in our new reality.
Hello, and welcome to our rent collection session put on by Medallion Management. My name is Saul Mack, Vice President of Medallion Management. I've been with Medallion for over 17 years, and also have two panelist members next to me.
I'm Amanda Palmerton. I'm a resident specialist with Medallion Management, and I've been here for 13 years.
And I'm Tony Ogden, property manager with Medallion. I have successfully finished 30 years of service to Medallion and to the residents of our communities.
So overall, rent collection, I want to give you a brief description of what we're talking about. So the team and panelists will be discussing what is a rent collection policy, right? And what is the importance to establish the policy upon moving in new residents, but also reviewing that with the residents on an annual basis. We'll also be discussing ways to collect rent payments, and also how COVID affected rental payments and the policy as well. So to start off, what is a rent collection? What is a rent collection policy? That rent collection policy is basically a form that is made up from the resident and the development to make sure that's the foundation and the basis of what you should expect for that resident. It should have many criteria into it in regards to what that states. So one of the things that we have here at Medallion for our rent collection policy is the first time that any resident may be late, just notice to say, hey, just a reminder, you were late. The second time this happens, it's the same thing. During that time frame between the first and second time of the residents are paying late, the resident managers are charged with the task of having them reach out to say, hey, is there any questions, any concerns as these start to build up? In the event that the residents are late during their third time in 12 months, then that's when we have another letter sent to the residents that talks about a continual delinquency. That continual delinquency talks about we are no longer able to be late. And again, discussing more ways of having them come into the office or discuss what's going on so we can kind of help and alleviate this concern. In the event they are late a fourth time in the 12-month period, this is when we have a tenant counseling. This tenant counseling is by far one of the best tools we have at as our team, because there is a one-on-one dialogue or conversation with that resident. Sometimes the residents maybe have ignored the letters previously, but this one-on-one gives us a chance to just sit down and discuss what are the issues, what are the concerns. Sometimes it's just remembering. Sometimes it's just maybe put a notice on their door, or maybe a simple phone call to say, hey, your rent is coming up, don't forget to pay it. Sometimes it's just maybe need help. Maybe the resident doesn't have means or opportunities to reach out to other facilities or agencies to grab help. So this is where we put on our different hat and reach out to other agencies in behalf of that resident to get them connected to different places so they can help them get that rent paid. In the event we reach to a fifth time in 12 months, this is grounds for eviction. But notice in tenant counseling, which would have been our fourth time, all this information would have been given to our residents. Now, I understand that this is not a position that we want to be in, and we try our best to make sure that the residents understand the rent collection policy, but also that eviction is our very, very last option. We want to make sure that they have every opportunity to reach out and make payment. It's a payment agreement or payment plan. We try to do that to the best of our ability. Like I said, again, we want to make sure that the residents given every ability to discuss and make payment in a timely manner. So we also talked about a rent collection policy. So what should be in it? So there's many, different ways to come up with a rent collection policy and what should be in it. But just the basics of it, you really want to have just your resident information, which is the head of household, their name, their address, but also have your development, because you want to make sure in the event that they're going to send payment, who do you want that payment to be sent to? You want to be sent to the corporate office, or is the current development that you're at, are you collecting payments there? So you want to make sure this is established early on with the residents. They know what that procedure is. Other things to be sent is, when is the rent due? You know, I've seen some of them that says rent is due on the 1st. I've seen some say it's due on the 5th. But then once you establish when the rent is due, what is the grace period? So that is very, very important, because some residents may contact you and call you and say, well, hey, I really can't pay my rent on the 1st. I'm not sure what my grace period is. So this is very important to go over that key element, because sometimes that 10-day grace period may be what the resident's looking for to make sure they get that rent paid on time. I always tell our staff here at Medallion that, you know, the rent is due on the 1st. We don't have a problem if you want to pay it before, but the rent is due on the 1st, and the grace period stands between 5 days and 10 days, depending on what your program development policies are. And then the other part is the late fees. So what is the penalties in regards to your rent collection policy? In the event they do end up going past that late fee, go past the days allotted, what is the late fee amount? And then from there, if residents have still not paid, what is the repercussions? So here at Medallion, our repercussions will be after 7 business days of them getting the NTQ and after the grace period. And then this is when we try to send our information to our attorneys to file for possible eviction or getting the unit turned over. So we also want to look at and see, you know, how is the lease correlating with your rent collection policy? And most times in doing that, your lease should be mirrored the same image of what your rent collection policy is. So for instance, if your lease has a certain amount and it has a certain, you know, time frame and grace period and all that, that should be all in your lease, and then your rent collection should establish the same methods. So that way, when you're going over your information with your residents, you're giving them more information of the same itemized information. So if it's all the same, you can repeat it to them during the move-in process. Another important thing is, you know, when should this be discussed? And typically here at Medallion, we discuss this all the time. You know, the very first step of it in regards to rent collection is during the first time we're doing the rent income qualifications. Because at this point, we want to make sure that the resident has enough income first of all to be able to make that payment. So that's when the conversation starts. In the event everything has been approved and we're moving on to the signing of the leases and other forms, including the rent collection policy, then this is when we go over all this information again with them and tell them that, hey, this is the standards, and this is when you want to pay, this is the late fee and grace period. We also do this during any interim recertifications, because at that point in time, the rent may be changing. So we want to make sure we establish this point again. In any event, if they have an additional family members who are turning 18 or more, or in the event they're adding additional family members, we want to make sure we tell the whole family as well in the event of those who are adults. We also go over this information again during our annual recertifications, and also during our incidents when they're getting their reports during their first, second, and third times in the event they're late. So we have this established, you know, pretty much often to our point of emphasis with the residents, because we feel that the rent collection policy is something that's going to help the development grow and establish the funds that they're going to need to help maintain their future development. So just to go in more detail in regards to about the rent payment options, I'll have Amanda here, and she'll go over how and which ways to collect rents.
So collecting the rent in our industry is a vital part of it. Without that primary source of income, we simply can't keep the cost of the repairs and the maintenance for our apartment homes. We want to make sure that the rent paying process for the residents is as easy as possible. So we offer a wide variety of payment options for them to be able to use. Just a few years ago, our company only accepted money orders or personal checks from our residents by mail. We were kind of living in the Stone Age there. We realized how much we were limiting ourselves, and more importantly, we were burdening our residents by not having additional options. We made the decision to implement new options for rental payments, and it's helped our staff and our residents immensely. We now offer up to about 6 different options for our residents to pay their rent on time, and in turn for us to provide them the quality of housing our residents deserve and have come to expect. Our online options have been our most successful by far. Our company uses a program called RealPage, or OneSite. The software is used for our tenant information as well as our online resident payment portal. The The residents do have the option to pay with their checking account. They can use their savings account or a credit card. And once they make those payments, it instantly posts to their account with us through their resident ledger. Residents can elect to go in each month and select to pay it just that one time, or they can set it to automatically reoccur each month so they don't have to go in each month and worry about making that payment. This has been beneficial for those that might forget. If they have it set to reoccur, then it just automatically takes it right out for them, and then the rent is paid and there's nothing more that they have to worry about. It's also a great option for our fixed income residents. Those who generally only receive their income once a month. Example, if they get their rent on, or the rent is due on the 1st, but we've given them a 5-day grace period. If their rent or their income happens to be deposited on the 5th of the month, they can go right in, make that payment on the online resident portal. They're paid, and then they don't risk having a late fee for having that not have their rent in on time. Paying by credit card is also now an option that we have chosen. It does involve a fee. However, it's a great option for those residents who might find themselves in a pinch or in a situation where they don't have any other resources available to them. One site also has the capability to produce what we call an e-money order coupon. Many of the residents don't have our typical bank accounts, checking or a savings account. And so by printing off the e-money order coupon, they can take it to Walmart, is one of our main providers for this, or some of the local convenience stores also offer the service, and they can take it in there, make their payment. They would pay just like they would a money order, but instead of them handing them a physical copy of a money order, they electronically transfer the funds directly from Walmart or that convenience store to us with the resident portal. And it posts immediately, and again, it's instant cash, and it doesn't take anything more for them. Once the best features of this option is that they only have to print that coupon once as well, so they can use it as the time frame that they are a tenant with us. The only time that they would have to print it an additional time would be if they were to transfer units, because it's linked to that unit with their household. So it's convenient. They don't have to continue to come in each month and print off a coupon. They just take it right there to Walmart or whichever convenience store participates, and then they can pay their rent that way, which has been very handy, and a lot of residents choose that option. Many of our residents still prefer the old-fashioned way of paying rent, where they just simply mail it here to the corporate office. One of the things that our company does is we provide self-addressed colored envelopes directly to our site staff, and they in turn pass those out to the residents. They're not required to use these, but if they choose to do so, it does make things easier for us when the rent comes here to the corporate office. Each of our colored envelopes that we send to the site staff that they give to the tenants is specifically colorized for the accountant that manages that property here at our office, and making the rent payments much easier to sort when the mail comes in. We also have a few sites who we've selected to accept rental payments on site. Not all of our sites do. The site managers for those sites do have the responsibility of collecting and posting the rents to the specific resident accounts and making sure that they get posted timely. All of our site managers, however, do collect the move-in money at the time of move-in in exchange for the keys, but only a select few of our sites are able to actually collect that monthly rent. When paying by mail, some of our residents choose that option, and for move-in, we are able to accept personal checks, cashier's checks, and money orders. Our company has elected to adopt a no cash policy for our rental payments. The last option that our company has for paying rent is offering our residents the ability to drop off their rent payments here in person to our corporate office. Even with the wide range of options that we have available here for our residents, many still prefer to have that one-on-one contact with our staff and the reassurance of knowing that we have their rent payments here in our hands. To many, having that tangible receipt in their hand is just like getting that Willy Wonka golden ticket. Since the COVID's hit, we as a company have actually had to physically change our office settings and our policies to accommodate and protect not only our employees, but our residents as well. We've closed our office to the public, but we've installed a wall-mounted drop box for the tenants to be able to place their rent in with a no contact if they choose. With all of this being said, and under this COVID pandemic, we most likely will see that this ends up changing how companies operate in the future. Many of the old ways, such as the residents coming in and receiving that one-on-one interaction, will most likely become a thing of the past. In these times, it just takes a lot of hard work and patience to work through these trying times. Tony?
And thank you, Amanda. So our rent collection process and policy is ever changing, and eventually we'll end up with a new normal. Saul reviewed with the current policy, the procedures, and the enforcement of rent collection. Amanda just did a review of how payments can be made, the changes that we've implemented for residents to be making their payments, and also the physical changes to our office to accommodate the residents and rental payments. The current reality has evolved during COVID-19, and it probably will continue to evolve. Here at the corporate level, we used to, and we still do, initiate the notice to quits that go out to the residents. We set up the court dates and then follow through with evictions if they are necessary. On the site manager staff level, a lot of the workload has been added to our site staff where they're making additional phone calls and they're following up with the residents to get the rent collected. The government sent out stimulus checks, and we all know that there's additional $600 per month added to the unemployment for those folks that were on unemployment at the time. So as a company, we know that there was multiple sources of funding out there that the government was giving out, and we worked with our site staff to make sure that they were staying in the forefront minds of the residents to make sure that the rents get collected. Due to the eviction moratorium, March was the last month that we were able to initiate NTQs and send them out to the tenants. So we went through the months of April, May, June, and July, and we developed what we called late rent notices. These late rent notices we felt was important to let the tenants know that there still is, the rent is due, and the dollar amount of that rent that had to be paid. Many residents were coming to us and they were hearing on the internet and from each other that the rent didn't have to be paid, which was inaccurate. And so we had taken upon ourselves to make sure that we shared with them that the rent is still due and eventually it's going to have to get paid. Some of our residents were able to get the rent caught up with their late rent notices when we sent it out, and other ones fell behind on a monthly basis and accumulated the rent amounts that needed to be paid. So MSHDA came out and announced in July the eviction diversion program. This became another method for us to use and to help our residents in order to get the rent collected. Just an overview of the EDP program. MSHDA partnered with the local HERAs to assist the residents that fell behind in rent during the COVID-19 pandemic. There was $50 million that was allotted and available for rental assistance payments to the landlords. The landlord did have to agree to a 10% reduction of rent, and we had to agree to waiving of all late fees. Eligibility for the program included residents could qualify if their area median income was up to 110% of the AMI. Funding became available once the eviction or the Michigan-wide moratorium of evictions was lifted. Requiring a notice to quit, or landlords were required to provide a notice to quit or some type of court documentation. The assistance payments was structured based on income. And for example, if a household median income was 50% of the area median income or lower, then the resident would qualify for up to 90% of rent arrearages and up to $1,200 in future rent. A resident application was required, and also there was landlord information that had to be submitted. We found the easiest way of providing the information to the HERA was for the application to be filled out by the resident, given to our site managers, and then we filled out the landlord information and submitted it directly to the HERA. And the funding does end as of December 30th, 2020, or when the funds have been exhausted. So August was the first month that we were able to initiate notice to quits and send out to the residents for those that were late with rent. We did include an application for the EDP program at the same time that we mailed these out. Our site staff began working and following up with the tenants as soon as the NTQs were received, not only working with the residents in order to get it collected and work through the program, but we were also working with the HERA and following up in order to enable success of the program. So the rent collection for 2020, we started tracking on it to see if the dollar amount of success of the EDP program. In the month of January of this year, our collection rate was at 97.5%. And everybody knows that usually your holiday spending affects the January and February collection rates. March, we got back up to 98%, and 98% is what our normal average is. For the months of April, May, June, and July, there was a decrease in our collection rate, and in the end of the month of August, we end up 94.3% collection. So the EDP success, we feel, is going to be successful for the majority of our properties. We did do analysis of a total as of September 25th. We had 9 properties that were successfully either received funds or had commitments for about $40,000 from the program. And many of our managers are still working the program and working with our residents in order to increase that success. So we're looking forward to the end of September and going forward and seeing what kind of a dollar amount is successful to assist the tenants. We did have a Zoom meeting with 4 of our residents a couple days ago. 4 of our resident managers that were successful with the program, and we wanted to give kudos to them and allow them the opportunity to share with everybody their successes and some of the struggles as they went through with the program in order to assist residents in just general rent collection then. So here's a video. We'd like to share it with everybody.
I'd like to welcome our resident managers here from Medallion Management. And I'd like to first start off with Annette, if you want to tell us about your development.
My name is Annette White, and I am the resident manager. I am in a development of tax credits and 811 programs and project-based vouchers over here at my property, and I've been with the company for 12 years.
And
Jennifer Fuller, tax credit development property, and I've been with the company for 2 years.
Tanya?
Latanya Fleming, my development is tax credit in Section 8. I've been with the company since April 2017.
And Life? I think you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm Life Walker. Development is tax credit, and I've been with Medallion for 4 years.
Okay. So Tony and I came up with the idea to contact you all because you guys have the most success that we've seen in our portfolio in regarding to the EDP. We want to get your thoughts, your opinions, and just overall how that's working, and what initially did it take for you to start that process with the residents?
We'll go ahead and we'll start with Annette.
Okay, so to start the process with the collections of rents after the NTQs.
Yep.
So we initially serve them with the NTQ, and in the event they don't pay, we also were working with the eviction diversion program, in which was with HRI to assist people with their back payment and rent. We reach out to people who usually aren't on the NTQ list, and if they're delinquent with their rent, we just ask them if they're experiencing any issues. We can provide contact names and numbers of services of agencies that can assist them, to give them all kinds of different alternatives of where they can go to get assistance to get their balance satisfied. So we just pretty much have an open line of communication with anything that we can do on our end to make the process go smoother for them, to keep them at a zero balance with us at our property.
So Annette, your property type is tax credit. Obviously, you have a huge number of special needs folks at the property. You also had access to the case management. Did you find that successful?
Yes. So, well, with the case management, like we have HRI, they have an office right here on our property, and the residents can work directly with her for those who she is under her portfolio of the services that she provides. So Yeah, they can go to their case management. They can reach out to them. They can come to me. My door is always open to them, but there's always a line of communication where anything that I can assist them with or any resources that I may not be aware of. That's where HRI will come in and put in her feedback of anything she can do to get them assisted with any back payment. So the services have actually been really great. We also have another office with ISK here at the property who he's pretty hands-on as well.
Certainly there's advantages to have the support services in our building, but unfortunately not all the properties have that ability. Jennifer, you had a real high success with the EDP program. Go ahead and give us an explanation of the process and how you went about working with the residents in order to get the balances satisfied.
It was basically the same way. It started with the NTQs every month. Or if I knew that there was someone struggling with their rent, once the program brochure came out, I actually placed the phone call to them. But I went out to every resident and went from there. Keeping the communication, and it was talking with HRI directly myself and helping them like she did with any other program. I helped with medical bills, anything.
I think too, one of the important keys before the ED program came through is that we were also having great communication working with residents in regards to making payments. I believe we weren't doing anything of the NTQs early on, and which it was important for us to kind of figure that situation out. Jen, did you have any of those situations where they had to come in and talk to you and make some payment plans together, keep their payment down?
I did. I had like 2 residents with that problem. They both been laid off due to COVID employment. So they were keeping the lines open with me. We were also seeking assistance from area churches to help them through until the HRI EDP came through.
Okay. So not only did the main assistance, which would be HRI here for our county, was helping, you also had other individuals tied in probably to your affirmative fair housing marketing plan, or just different agencies who are helping to them? Different agencies were helping them.
So just kind of, go ahead, Jen.
I'm having a hard time hearing both of you.
You were cutting out in and out just a little bit too, Jen, so I'm not sure if it was on our end or not, so you know.
Okay.
And Life, a smaller property, just finished up a tax credit qualifying and went through a rehab. So you've gone through a lot of stress this year, but again, you still had real good success with communication with the residents and working on getting balances paid. In fact, you were the first one within my portfolio that jumped on the program that got started with sending information and ledgers to HRI. Being that you're part of the Kalamazoo County, give us a rundown of your experience and what you've done with the residents. You're on mute.
So, my experience was very similar to Jen and Annette's. I know we started out when we had did the initial NTQs, or they had to go to court and we stopped doing NTQs for a while. We were sending them the rent letters. So I would just call residents frequently, because once COVID hit and they began going out of work, the main thing was everybody was applying for unemployment. So it was real hard to get through. They couldn't ever get through to anybody. It was something needed. So it was a lot of them that were waiting. So just constantly having them check on that, check on that. Have you heard anything yet? Have you heard anything yet? That was probably the funnest. But outside of that, phone calls, reaching out, giving them resources, other places that could help, like churches. There's the Kalamazoo Action Agency. I don't think anybody really, not too many people know about that. And they help out a lot. Churches, DHS also. So just encouraging them to get the help and be patient and understanding. And then as soon as I did hear about the EDP, I immediately called everyone. And what I did, there was someone who had already was working with the eviction diversion who had court ongoing. And what I did, I spoke to the lady at HRI and just filled out landlord applications for everybody who was going to court and sent it to her. So that way they had a record of everyone at some point. So it ended up all going through. It took some time because, you know, they take their time, but it ended up all working out. So
yeah, it did take some time, but it took a lot of your time that was invested in doing it, and that's why you did too. We appreciate it. So Tanya, you have a different property type, with it being Section 8, also being a tax credit. So I think you probably were involved in a lot more interim research. You want to give us a rundown on what you guys were attacking?
Well, first of all, when the COVID stuff first broke out, of course, we had the NTQs. Had to press OK. Plus, we had the NTQs going on. A lot of residents reached out with questions. Even though they had pending IRs, we pressed them that COVID doesn't mean that the rent is forgiven. It's just put on hold, but it's still building up, because a lot of the residents were thinking that, oh, COVID, we don't have to pay rent, all that stuff. I'm like, no, we drilled in them that that's not going to happen. It's going to come back to bite you eventually, so handle your business. We reached out to them on IRs that we had problems with getting the verifications back from the employers, because a lot of employers were shut down. We reached out to their HR department. A lot of residents brought in letters from when they stopped working, or if they were furloughed or laid off, they brought in those letters. We called and verified those. Also, we told them until the IR is complete that they still need to seek assistance, just in case, you know, it's because you still being charged rent. So I found out by accident for Indiana Housing Community Development Authority. I received this email where a resident wanted me to verify some stuff. And so I sent it to Casey at corporate, you and Tony, well, Casey and Tony at corporate. And then I talked to the resident about it. I'm like, how did you find out about it? She told me about it. So I started passing out that link, and come to find out they were paying like up to $2,000 per resident. So I started passing out the link to anybody who had problems or who were pending a IR. And then also we work closely with Bauer. We had them come in here, fill out the form for Bauer. We're a referral. So we're sending their ledger over to Bauer. Bauer will pay up to $2,000. We reached out to Salvation Army, area churches, an agency called Area 4. We were like, we just gave them a hit list. And it turned out good.
Yep.
But the most important thing is to tell the residents to stay on their IRs, and don't think because of this pandemic going on that amount was going to be erased, because a lot of them thought it was. Just because it was put on hold, they thought that money was just going to disappear somehow. I'm like, no, just the late fees at this point, but all that end up kicking back in. So a lot of them had a pretty much heads up, at least the ones that listened.
And it's probably the same ones that wanted to keep their housing where they were at too, right?
What was that again, Tony?
I said, and probably the same people that were listening to you were the ones that wanted to keep their housing. So that's why they
correct.
The program. I think all you guys found that out too.
That's definitely correct.
Do you have any idea of how much of an increase in the interim research that you had to do, or don't you have any numbers?
I don't have any numbers. I would estimate they were just coming in like daily. When we shut the office down, because we usually take the IRs in person, but by the office being shut down, we took them through phone, email, any lines. I took them through Facebook, through our Facebook website. Any way they reached out to me, we created the IR. So it was a lot. It had to be like maybe 100, over 100, over that.
It's quite a few for just a few months too.
It is.
Yeah,
And so
it's a lot.
So I assume too, at this point now, in this injunction while we're talking about it, you probably still have lots more that's still coming down the pipeline as well for all of you, right?
Well, actually, we have a court date for the non-rent payers going now, and their first court dates are not June, what am I thinking about? Are October the 6th and the 7th, so 2 days, 21 people. Some of them are IRs, and we're pressing for the IRs. We're still pressing for them to get assistance of that nature, but yeah, we'll see how that goes because they have to fill out that declaration, and then they have to go to court and determine if the declaration was due to COVID.
I see. Okay.
So that's what we're in the middle of now.
Has anybody else went to court at all or been to court recently?
We've been to, actually, I was in court today. But these were for criminal activity. So we got all those units.
And for you in Indiana, and the same through here in Michigan, the criminal activity is exempt. Those folks can be evicted. So the difficulty.
It happened to all 7 of them today.
The difficulty we have is the courts have to be open, and then our attorney has to get a court date for us to go in then.
Correct.
All right, yep. So all 4 of you, do any of you have an idea of how many other applications you're processing for the EDP program and what you anticipate more people that will be able to take advantage of the program?
Right now, I'm working on at least 21 people right now. And those are the ones with eviction court dates for the 6th and 7th. It's a mixture of the IRs and trying to get them funded in case the IRs don't be done or something of that nature.
Okay, Annette?
Well, I have about 12, maybe give or take a few that are going through that program. The program in itself is been phenomenal. I mean, it's been great for the residents. And I think the key with all of that is that a lot of people don't know about the program. And so as managers, it's our job to communicate. You know, we're not here to evict or just demand your money. We want to keep a roof over your head. We want to keep you housed. And if our job is to reach out to our residents to let them know their resources, to let them know that there's this program and this program. Because if you're not telling them as a manager, 9 out of 10, they don't know. They don't know what kind of agencies can assist them. So I think with all of us, you find a lot of success with just that communication as managers to our residents, because, you know, we want to keep them housed as well.
Jennifer?
I have 2 more that I'm working with or starting to work with, and she's correct. It is our job. And I just shared the love here with, first I got a call 211 and they've got to apply at DHS for SER relief before anything else happens. They have to be denied. So when they walk in the office, that's the first thing I tell them to do, because, you know, they can work together as time goes.
Yep, and I agree. I think it's very important to understand and know what the programs are. That way we can funnel people in the right direction of getting there. Life, do you have anything additional you're working on?
So I had the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pre-COVID that all had their EDPs approved. And then there were 2 that I had. One of them, she got approved and she just paid her copay. So she had court yesterday, but it's been dismissed. So I have 1 more court on Friday and she's already working with the EDP. She just hasn't been approved yet. So he told me to get a copy of her conditional dismissal on Friday and they'll pay for the court costs since they haven't made the decision yet, because he's almost pretty certain it will be an approval.
Okay. So we've had good success and we've got more coming down the pipeline. That's the encouraging part of it then.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything they want to add?
Yeah, and I just looked up online before the call and forgot to mention that the Indiana Housing Community Development Authority, they ran out of funds. So they're not even taking any more applications at this point.
Okay.
So all funds have been exhausted for that, but we still got a couple of more agencies like Bauer, Area 4, and the local churches and the Salvation Army. They just don't pay as much.
They're still out there to help and assist them. I know in Michigan, it was $50 million is what was allotted for the EDP program. Being that we're in the affordable housing industry, I'm pretty much sure that we're one of the first ones that grabbed onto it. And again, it's because of your guys' success and what you're doing out there, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely, we appreciate you. So don't stop giving up, and appreciate everything you're doing for us. So keep it going.
Thank you.
Okay.
So in a recap, we talked about, what was our current collection policy. We also discussed in regards to how in many different ways to collect rent. And then also how that has affected with COVID and that things have changed in regards to the EDP and how's it look now. So if there's any questions, we can take that now. I also like to thank my panelists for joining me today, putting this presentation together, and also the audience as well.
Mary, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Can you guys talk more about the counsel that you do with your residents after that fourth late in 12 months and why you wait until the fourth late payment to do that counseling?
Sure. So the fourth one is attendant counseling. And so that's when we try to do one-on-one. At this time, it'd be more of a phone conversation now, but we felt that it's probably important to bring them in. And if they haven't came in during the first 3 times, we try to get a hold of them, but sometimes they're not willing to. So this fourth one is kind of our last step to say, all right, what's going on? What's happening? How can we help? How can we bridge a gap in regards to making you meet your requirements here? So this fourth one is like regardless what's happening, we're going to meet. Whatever you have going on, we're going to get together and talk.
So basically, the intent of the counseling is actually to change the behavior of the resident and enable them to get to a point where they can pay the rent on time. So the manager staff that we have in the first couple of times of being late, like Saul had said, it's phone calls, it's following up, it's getting in their face that, okay, the rent needs to get paid. And then after that, it becomes more serious where we have to start relying on documentation, and that's why we do the counseling. I'm sorry, we do the continued delinquency notice with the residents. In that continued delinquency notice, we're spelling out the actual months that you're being late and what is going to happen after that if you continue being late. At the counseling session, that's the one-on-one session that Saul had mentioned, where we sat down and you've been late with rent on January, February, March, and now we're at a point, if you continue being late, that it will eventually lead to an eviction, but that eviction is not what we want. Our goal is to get the rent collected.
Miranda, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could talk about how your approach differs related to a tenant just not paying their rent as opposed to paying their rent late.
Well, for our resident manager team, they are the ones at the office who will kind of initiate that conversation. And so we have a lot of our managers in the event that do reminders, and some of the residents will come to us and say, I can't make this payment until, during the grace period, which is typically fine. So now we have an idea of what's happening. So I think on the site level, we put that responsibility on them to reach out to the residents and kind of figure that part out as far as what's the reason why. Do they need help? Do they need some assistance? Do they need us to make some phone calls? Or is their hours have changed and they just haven't forgot to report it to us, and now we need to make sure in the event they are getting some type of assistance to get that reported so we can verify the information on their tick. So it's just a different combination of different things. But that really is involved with the resident managers on site to reach out to every resident who may be paying late to see what the circumstances are.
And also, most important, it's important for us, for fair housing, to make sure we're being consistent in the enforcement of the rent collection policy. Some folks may continually be late with the rent, whereas those that are not paying need to be treated equally and the same. For those of us that have been around as long as I have, they may remember way back in the day that we used to accept rental payments from DHS half will come in the first part of the month and the other half will come in during the middle of the month. But that process and that allowed some residents to be paying rent on a continual late basis, and it wasn't acceptable anymore. So the enforcement of our rent collection policy went to rents due on the 1st. If you're a HUD site, you have a 5-day grace period. If you're a MSHDA or conventional, typically you'll have a 10-day grace period, and it's important to treat everybody equally and the same.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions or comments. So do you guys want to go ahead and wrap up?
Sure. So I'd like to thank Mr. and Cinnaire for putting on this conference virtually. We understand that during this climate of times, everything outside the box, and so Medallion Management is definitely willing to help. And so for that, I'd like to thank you for inviting us. Thank you again for my colleagues here for participating, and also for the audience who's out there partaking in this. So I appreciate everyone's help.
And we appreciate Medallion's leadership on this session very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.